Hey everyone, Sam here, and today I'm really excited to share my version of puff pastry. Now, this is kind of a cheater's version of puff pastry. It's a lot easier than traditional recipes that use a butter block and require long periods of laminating and chilling and laminating. It's a lot simpler than any of those recipes. It does still take a little bit of time and of course a little bit of technique, so I'm going to be walking you through all of the steps today. Now, the first thing you're going to need for today's recipe is 2 1/4 cups of all-purpose flour. You're going to want to put this in a large bowl. Along with the flour, we're going to be adding 1 tablespoon of granulated sugar and 1 teaspoon of salt. Now just whisk your dry ingredients together so that everything is nicely combined. The next thing you're going to need is 1 cup or 2 sticks of unsalted butter. Now, if you can get your hands on it, I highly recommend using a European butter. It's just going to make the puff pastry all that much better. It's going to give it a really nice flavor, but regular butter that you buy from the store will work just as well. Now, it's really important that this butter be very, very cold, so don't take it out of the fridge until you're ready to use it. And what I actually like to do is I'll pop it in the freezer about 20 minutes before I'm ready to start making my puff pastry, so it's really nice and cold. So in order to get this butter worked into our flour mixture, we're actually going to be using a box grater. This is a technique I use with my flaky homemade biscuits. It works really great. What I'm gonna do, kind of funny, it's a box grater and it works great, sorry. What I'm gonna do is I'm going to grate the butter into my flour mixture. As you can see, I usually leave the wrapper on my butter. That way I just have something to hold onto while I'm grating it. Once I get down to the bottom, I'll get rid of that and I'll cut up that last little piece of butter. Now, I also only grate the butter about half a stick at a time. And after I grate half a stick, I'm just going to use a spoon to stir these butter pieces into the flour mixture. I just like to do this intermittently so that the butter doesn't clump together. And once you get down to just this small little piece of butter at the end, I'll usually just use a knife to cut it up into small pieces, and then I'll work that butter into the flour again. Now the next thing that you're going to need is about 7 to 8 tablespoons of ice water. You do want this water to be very cold, just like you want your butter to be cold, because if your butter starts to melt or your dough gets too warm, you're not going to get those nice, puffy, flaky layers in your puff pastry. So you definitely use cold water. Also, you notice I say about 7 to 8 tablespoons. It's very possible that your own puff pastry might need less or more water. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to drizzle this in slowly while stirring, and I'll show you what to look for to know that your puff pastry has had enough water. This is starting to come together, but I can tell from looking at it that it's still a little bit too dry. We have too much flour that I can see that hasn't been absorbed, so I'm just gonna add a little bit more water. Again, I'm only gonna do about a teaspoon or 2 teaspoons at a time until we reach the right consistency. All right, so it's taken me about 9 tablespoons, but finally the dough is the consistency that we're looking for. And what that is if you're stirring it, you don't see a lot of dry flour mixture. Most of it is starting to cling to the butter and starting to cling together. However, it is still a very shaggy and quite dry dough. The reason I know it's okay is because if I take a piece of it and I pinch it together, it's sticking together. That's not crumbling apart. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take this and we're going to transfer it to a clean, lightly floured surface. I know it looks pretty messy right now, but we're about to fix that. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to use your palms and your hands to just work this dough together until it's clinging together. You don't want to overwork the dough, otherwise you'll warm it up, you'll melt that butter, you're not going to have those flaky layers, but just use your hands to work this together so the dough is clinging together. Use your hands to work this dough into a rectangle. It'll be like a block. It should be about 6 by 3 inches. Now you're going to need some plastic wrap, and we're going to wrap up this puff pastry dough nice and tightly and transfer it to the fridge where it's going to need to chill for at least 30 minutes. Before I take this away, I do just want to point out that you still have these nice big pieces of cold butter in your puff pastry. It might look like everything's not really well worked together. It's supposed to look like that. You want to have these big chunks of butter in here. That's what's going to give us those flaky layers. All right, let me take this to the fridge. Once your puff pastry dough has chilled for at least 30 minutes, now you're going to want to remove it from the fridge, and we're going to transfer it to a clean, lightly floured surface. You'll want to use a rolling pin to roll this brick out into an 8 by 12 inch rectangle. Well, at least that's pretty close to a rectangle. It's close enough. Now at this point, we're going to start folding our dough. You're going to take the shorter end and you're going to fold it a third into the center. Then you'll take the other end and fold that over the first edge. Use a spatula if your dough is starting to stick to the counter. So you just folded this dough kind of like you would be folding a letter. Now you'll rotate this dough 90 degrees. I'll lightly flour my surface again. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to roll this dough into an 8 by 12 inch rectangle again. Now we'll repeat the folding process where we fold this dough like a letter again. Rotate our dough 90 degrees again. And we're going to repeat this folding and rolling process until we've done 4 turns of our dough. You'll notice with each turn, the dough gets nicer looking. It'll be a little less rough and shaggy looking each time. Now what all of this folding and rolling and turning is doing is we are working those buttery, flaky layers into our puff pastry. Essentially, this is what's going to make that pastry puff when you bake it in the oven. All right, let's give this dough one final fold. You'll want to wrap it tightly with plastic wrap. Now the last step is to let this puff pastry dough chill for at least 30 minutes in the refrigerator before you use it. Now how you use this puff pastry dough is up to you. What we've made here is the equivalent of 1 box of store-bought puff pastry. This is great for using on top of chicken pot pie or making turnovers or making palmiers, which I will be sharing a recipe for shortly. That is really all there is to making puff pastry. I really hope you guys enjoyed this cheaters version. I certainly love using it in my own house. And if you try this out, please let me know what you think. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Hey, if you guys enjoyed today's puff pastry recipe, I would really appreciate it if you would give me a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Also, if you enjoyed today's recipe video, here are a few others you might like as well.